Revolutionary greetings, comrades, from wherever you're watching us. Of course, this Comrade Pidgin Odumengu from Consciousness Study Group. We are a class, not actually a class, but a group of critical thinkers, the Pan-African, progressive Pan-Africans, who actually go through to understand the philosophy and ideology by Kwame Nkrumah. This philosophy and ideology is called scientism or consciousness, which is actually a prescribed philosophy for decolonizing Africa. And what Nkrumah meant with the decolonization of Africa is a totally liberated Africa, a totally unified Africa, and a totally developed Africa. That is the vision of Nkrumah, is the vision most of us progressive Pan-African hold. So yes, this is our Saturday class, which is purely for unification of Africa. And today we are looking at the Caribbean. We have the main class on Thursdays. Every Thursday, 7 p.m. GMT, you can join us, where we read the book bit by bit, paragraph by paragraph, and we share our thinking so that we can build together our consciousness that then can actually help us in this struggle. So today we are looking at the Caribbean. It will be the first part, what we call the introduction to the Caribbean. So basically, people have not maybe know clearly what's the Caribbean all about. You'll be able to get the opportunity to know the Caribbean, what's the past relationship between the Caribbean and Africa, and their contribution in the struggle, and everything else that pertains to the Caribbean, and actually, as I've said, the relationship between the Caribbean and Africa. That is very important to us. We have a presenter today, Brother Joseph, or Elder Joseph, of course, Antoine, Professor K, from the Caribbean, and also we have members of our class today. So before we go ahead, as our usual tradition, we get updates guided by the Continent magazine that we do read for a period of time. But today we'll start with the music from the Caribbean. This music is actually the history of the Caribbean, how they left the continent to the Caribbean and what they went through. That will be a clear start off. Then we get to the continental news. So permit me to go straight to that. But Brother Kwame, before I go straight to that, Kelly, feel free to welcome members to the class.
Yes, so brothers and sisters who are here and those who are here to join us and those who will watch the video when it is uploaded on our YouTube channel, would like to welcome you all to today's class on this is 2nd of March 2024. We would like to warmly welcome you all to the class today, and we hope that not only will you listen actively to the presentation led by our own brother Joseph, who is a regular attender of our Thursday classes on philosophy and ideology, but also that you will also participate warmly and actively. So thank you for coming, and yeah, let's listen to the musical history, as it were, of our family in the 6th region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me play this music.
And then times change in so many, many ways. Till one day somebody said, free the bloody slave. I was then put out on the street. I had no clothes, I had no food, I had no place to sleep. I had no education, no particular ambition. This I cannot conceal. Forgot my native culture, live like a vulture. From the white man I had to steal, because he made me work. I said I work, oh Lord, no pay. I toil, I say I toil so hard each day. I'm dying.
Thank you, comrades. That's our starting music from the Caribbean, of course. Is a emotional music, of course, but is a good music that gives us the history of the Caribbean and the continent. And we'll be discussing this as we get deep into the discussion today for the continent. So today we'll be actually looking at the Continental magazine immediately after this, which I'm doing now. Then from here now we'll start out our class officially. So that's the music from the Caribbean. It is an introduction to give us the history between the continent and the Caribbean. So permit me to go to the current affairs very fast. Then we get the presentation from Brother Joseph. So from the continent today, this is the 152th edition. No, this is the previous edition. Let me get to the current edition, and then we can start off. But anyway, you're free to just briefly talk about your reaction in regards to that. But
yeah, once Brother Pigeon, once you are getting the current edition, I want to say that that it was, for me, very emotional watching that video. Reminded me of roots. I noticed there were roots, seen some roots in that video as well, about Kunta Kinte and how he was kidnapped from Africa and enslaved in America in 1767. Refused to accept his slave name of Toby, and S kept his heroic defiance alive, whispering the name of Kunta Kinte from one generation to the next, until it reached Alex Haley, who then made the film. So I don't know if all of us have watched the film Roots, but if you haven't, please do, because this, what we've just listened to in terms of the video, recaptures the suffering and at the same time, dialectically, the defiance of Africans kidnapped in the Caribbean. Their defiance and their will to be free against all the odds, and not to accept the imposition of a foreign perspective on them. So I think it's a fitting place to start today. Yeah, because the suffering of our brothers and sisters is the suffering of us all. Just imagine if what was happening to our brothers and sisters in the Americas and in the Caribbeans. Just imagine that there was internet in those days, and that was relayed across the whole world. Just imagine how it would have been quickly ended. But we didn't have the technology we have today. Yeah, so because we see the suffering of the Palestinians live, sometimes on our televisions, on our internets, and so on. And for hundreds of years, our brothers and sisters just suffered, and there was no media to tell us, to bring the story to us. And some of us in Africa were oblivious of what was going on. Some of our chiefs had no clue. So yeah. So anyway,
thank you, thank you. Thank you for expressing your feelings. So I'll go straight to the continent. This is the second March edition. We read the Continent magazine as, of course, the current alternative available that gives almost a summary of what takes place the whole week. Of course, we are looking forward to get other alternatives of the magazine within the continent, or the Pan-African magazines, especially progressive ones. And once we get in touch with any, we'll be free to share. If you know any source of any magazine that either have a weekly update, something like that, or a monthly update, just get in touch with us so that we can be able to share more and more. So that's why we've been using this for a while now, but we're looking forward to having more and even creating ours internally. If you can
yes, Brother Pigeon, just so you know, Brother Renumi has been in touch and has shared other magazines that he thinks we can also share. So that I'll pass those on to you, in due course. Yeah.
Yes, I've looked at them. Just that they are not doing weekly basis, but they're doing at least monthly basis. So we have agreed on a monthly, end of month, like now, if possible. When the edition is out, we can look at it, or we look at it the next week once we get in touch with that.
Excellent.
So this Continent magazine, starting with the story of Sudan, we've started with our brothers who's actually suffered in the Transatlantic many years ago, but today they're our brothers surviving in Sudan. Very sad. Very sad. It's actually unfolding on our eyes again today. So let me start it. So it says the surviving Sudan. So let me proceed. So the inside, we have the Uganda issue, South Africa, we have the investigation, the Malawi, and so many other narrations. As we go straight, let's go to The Hague. Stories here about reparations granted for warlord victims. So nearly 50,000 survivors of Dominic Ongwen, a Ugandan child soldier turned warlord, will receive symbolic cash reparations and rehabilitation services. On Wednesday, the ICC at The Hague granted $56 million in reparation to the victims of rape, murder, and abduction crimes. Ongwen was convicted of from his time in the Lord Resistance Army. The money will come from the court-owned fund for victims. In Ghana, government limits the rights for gay people further. Although gay sex has already a punishable offense in Ghana, on Wednesday, the country's parliament passed legislation imposing a prison sentence of up to 5 years for willful promotion, sponsorship, or support of LGBTQ activities among the controversial measures. In Tunisia, from president to repeat offending, enemy of the state. In absentia, former Tunisian President Monkef Mazouki heard of his second prison sentencing. A Tunis court sentenced him to 8 years for statement he made on social media. Mazouki, who is exiled in France, was also sentenced to 4 years imprisonment in 2021 for urging France to end its support for incumbent President Kais Saied. In Mauritius, we are only taking up views. I'll share this magazine in the chat so you can have access to it, but you can also subscribe to their channel so that you get up weekly update. In Mauritius, seasickness so bad, it looked like cholera. So with at least 15 out of 3,000 passengers on a crew of the Norwegian Dawn reportedly suffered from diarrhea and vomiting, Mauritania's authorities prevented the luxury cruise ship from docking until they were certain there was no cholera on board. No traces of cholera were found in collectors and boats of ship that was allowed to dock at Mauritius' capital. In Chad, electoral calendar off to a deadly start. Days after Chad announced that its presidential election was scheduled for May 6, the opposition leader was killed in a shootout with state security at his party offices. Yaya Dillo, a cousin and opponent of incumbent President Dabi, was accused of participating in an assassination attempt on a judge, which he denied. Dabi, an allied colonial power France in a region that is increasingly hostile, is expected to run for mayor election. So he was shot dead. He was killed. Now in Mozambique, violence displaces tens of thousands. After a period of relative calm, a new wave of insurgent violence has internally displaced tens of thousands of people in Cabo Delgado in Mozambique North, according to the government. Iran, it's just about election in Iran, which will not be so much on our focus. In Ethiopia, French journalists released after conspiracy arrest. Antoine Galindo, a journalist with the African intelligence, was released after being detained in Ethiopia for a week, returned to France. The reporter was charged with conspiracy to create chaos after interviewing a spokesperson of the opposition party. In Russia, there's a story about African migrants are now a weapon in proxy war on West. Britain's The Telegram report that Russia is working to control the flow of African migrants through Libya to weaponize migration into Europe. That's what they're trying to report here. That is according to The Telegraph. It quotes a security source: if you can control the migrant routes into Europe, then you can effectively control elections. You can restrict or flood a certain area with migrants in order to influence public opinion at a critical time. It fails to mention this weapon is only a threat thanks to the demonstration of migrants by politicians and right-wing outlets like the Telegram itself. In Zambia, national disaster declared over drought. There has been little to no rain in Zambia in the past 5 weeks, when farmers' crop needed it most. This led to President Hakainde Hichilema to declare a national disaster on Thursday. In Kenya, Haiti still thinks Kenya police can solve this problem. President Ruto hosted Haiti Prime Minister Ariel Henry in Nairobi on Thursday. The two leaders are cooking up a controversial deal to send 1,000 police officers or policemen to quell gang violence in the Caribbean. The United States offered to pay for the scheme, which was last month declared illegal by the court of Kenya. But laws have rarely stopped Ruto, or for that matter, Kenyan police, and the deal appears to be going ahead regardless. In South Africa, the police claim breakthrough in Aka murder. Kenan Forbes, better known by his stage name, aka or Aka, was murdered alongside his friend outside Durban restaurant in February 2023. Over the past week, police in South Africa and Eswatini have arrested 7 men in connection with the crime, which they claim was contract killing. The men were allegedly paid $41,000 for the murder. In Uganda, when all trees is not usually international news, but few trees on the continent or in the world are stories as this ancient canarium on the campus of Kiambago University outside Kampala, thought to be more than 150 old. This is the tree here. In West Africa, ECOWAS blink fast in coup belt face off. The ECOWAS has suspended its sanction against Niger and is easing those against Guinea and Mali. The sanctions were meant to punish put chiefs for military coups. A wave of coup d'etat has swept the region in recent years, starting with Mali in August 2020 and encompassing constitutional changes of power in Chad, Guinea, and Mali again, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Gabon. So ECOWAS responded to the coup in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Guinea by imposing sanctions. Now, this is a story that's well covered here. If you go ahead, it's a long story that it's very interesting. We need to check on that. Now,
yeah, so hold on. So Pigeon, what is the issue here now? Because all you've mentioned, we already know that. So what is the new story here?
It says that ECOWAS has suspended its sanctions against Niger alone.
So that is a new story.
Yes.
Okay. And do we know why? Does it say why?
I don't know. And it's ceasing those against Guinea and Mali.
It's okay. You carry on. Thank you.
Yeah, but the story is full covered here that maybe can give us the story why. So in South Africa, for most of its history, South Africa was governed by the white supremacy. So this is a story about the election coming in. Navas ANC launches re-election campaign. So there's here a story that has been covered, and they say the history of how the election has been going on and the change from the white supremacists to when apartheid ended and the national conference. So there's a story covered there of what's coming in the election of South Africa. You see people are carrying a casket written RIP, Zuma, MK, some times back. So that's basically what's covered in regards to the election in South Africa. There's part of what's going on in Congo, in the Congolese. The Republic of Congo loaded its first ever cargo of liquefied natural gas. The cargo will sail in Piombino regasification terminal in Italy in the coming days. said a press statement in Eni, petrochemical giant controlled by the Italian state. The shipment is the first output for a 2022 agreement between Eni and Congo government. So there's still something going on in Eni clean energy promises in Republic of Congo. Now, if you go ahead, this whole story has been covered here. Then there's a story in Malawi, which title is Smokes and Mirrors, How Big Tobacco May Avoided Malawi Taxman. This is a story that's being covered here in the production of tobacco. They said that in 2020 was allegedly really good year for the Alliance One Tobacco Malawi Limited, which controlled 40% of Malawi tobacco market. This is a local subsidiary of one of the world's largest tobacco company called Pirates International. There's a whole story here that says that the year Alliance One exported nearly 27 million kilograms of Malawi-grown tobacco leaf, worth $173.6 million. So the story of tobacco selling from Malawi is also here extensively, which you can have a view on. What you're saying, you're just giving brief updates. Now, the story of Sudan here, they say as the war rages on, the resistance committees are keeping Sudan revolution alive, but only just. They ousted a dictator, defied a junta, and now Sudan's resistance committee are desperate to preserve their communities amidst the war. So we will call Amon. That's not so. This is a story about an interview with one of the Sudanese in regards to what's going on in the Sudan issue, which is Rise Up, a man recites a poem of resistance at Khartoum rally. So the whole of story is covered here fully in regards to what's going on in Sudan. Then, lastly, there's also Artists in Exile. Sudan Revolution in 2019 ushered in a golden age of art and creativity. Then came the war. So this is the impact of art. The Sudan Revolution is also covered extensively here. Then, still on the other side of Sudan, they say an easy and certain refuge from Sudan's war. So this is also still the Sudan story, fully covered here. And I think I will encourage members to actually have a look at this coverage on Sudan. So another, almost at the end, is the gender fairness is an unfinished job. So here they're trying to do the ratio of men should be prioritized for job and women who should be prioritized for the same rise to job as men. And neither, so they say that on the double occasion of Zero Discrimination Day, which is on March, the International Women's Day, 8th March, would like to celebrate that 100% of Africa reject discrimination against women in workplace. So this is the whole story they have covered here, the percentage that the survey in 39 countries tell us that 4 in every 10 adults, which is 40%, think that men should be given priority in hiring. Majority in 32 counties do endorse gender equality. So all this is the story of the data is here. There's in Calvado, they say, including more than fourth of the respondents in Calvado, 80%.
So I think, Brother Pigeon, I think this could be the start. We could look at this as our women's conference. We could look at this, start with this matter. I think it will be worthwhile to use this as a starting point.
Yeah, it will be a good basis for such conference. Yeah, yes. Let members know we are planning a women conference as a CSG on any day that we'll announce soon. So we want a conference where women can also discuss a bit their struggles and their contribution towards the liberation, unification, and development of Africa. So yes, Brother Kwame, I think this will be very good extract for such conference. So towards the end, of course, we have migrants are people too. So there's a story of many media stories about migrants who journey from Africa to Europe across the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea tend to begin with when the boats first met the shore. So there's a story of migrants here that's covering a lot of data here and how they travel to the Europe side and the stories that go along with their life, from being taken advantage of to the horrors of Libyan detention centers. Garon doesn't allow them to look away. So these are all struggle the migrants go through as a crossover. So basically, those are the key coverage topics for this magazine. Some I do not be members will be free to share some of their coverage.
So thank you. So the question for members or for those who are here is, as Pan-Africanists, this is a crucial question for us. How do these stories reflects how far or how near we are to the total liberation, unification, and the development of Africa. I mean, if Africa was united, liberated, and was developing, are these the kind of stories that a continental newspaper will be covering? Now, if we think it isn't, what are we prepared to do about it? Yeah, so that's why we look at this, to raise awareness of the fact that some of the continental news agencies are not looking at Africa from the Pan-African perspective, reminding ourselves that there isn't just one Pan-Africanism. There are people who are liberals who are also Pan-Africanists, and they are the liberal Pan-Africanists. There are also the conservative Pan-Africanists, and then there are some of us who are the radical Pan-Africanists. And all three of us do not see the world in the same way. So part of this review is to draw this to our attention. So thank you very much, Brother Pigeon, for reviewing the continent. Hopefully, as you said, we will look at other continental news channels. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. So I'll go back straight for Brother Joseph to take over. If you have members whom you feel can actually share some of their insights, also you let us know. But this is your session, Brother Joseph. So sorry, take over.
Yeah, before you go, can you show the map? One of the map of the Caribbean. I sent you one of them because I don't have the capacity to do it from my end. Can you show the map, the extended map of the Caribbean, so that people understand?
So Brother Joseph, you need this as a background, yeah, for the presentation. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I'm speaking. I don't have any PowerPoint and so, but I'm saying that the Caribbean. So against the background, yeah, yes.
The map, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because people have a superficial idea what the Caribbean is, you know. I mean, the Caribbean is a big piece.
Thank you. So for those who have joined us for the first time, I am a Christian Agbotsa. I am the chair of Consensusism. Brother Pigeon is the co-chair of Consensusism. And if you're wondering why I am talking so much, that is the reason. Whatever we do overall, I chair it, but operationally, Brother Pigeon is chairing the meeting. But I'm like also a resource person in the chair, and I'll come in again and again. So if you're wondering, that is the reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Joseph, Elder Joseph. Is this maybe probably fitting what you wanted?
Is that the one he sent you, Brother Pigeon? He said he sent you.
I sent him more than one. I sent him more than one, but maybe the other one, which will be more expansive. But I mean, basically, it's to show that the Caribbean is a big area in terms of both by water and land also.
All right. Whilst he's looking for it, you can proceed, Brother Joseph.
Yeah. So basically, one of the reasons why I wanted the map is that so that people understand that the Caribbean is not just the English-speaking Caribbean. It's not just the Spanish-speaking Caribbean or the Dutch or the French. Well, we had their Portuguese. I mean, we don't really have Portuguese. We have the Dutch, the Spanish, and of course the American. The American part of the Caribbean. I mean, we have the U.S. Virgin Islands. You have U.S. Virgin Island and Puerto Rico as part of the possession. Plus, you have the British Virgin Islands, which is part of Britain, and they have also other colonial colonies like Turks and Caicos Island.
Brother Joseph?
Yeah.
Is this on the screen fit your request?
Well, the map?
With the countries?
Yeah, Brother Pigeon, he said he sent you a map. That's what he wants you to share.
I'll pick what he shared. I'll pick what he shared.
Yeah, but share the map that he sent you. That's what he wants. Do you have it?
This is one of what he sent me. So I don't know if this is the specific map he's talking about.
But the one that you were showing first was more in line. I think I sent you two.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Just anyway, proceed. But the idea is that so that, for instance, you have from the Bahamas in the north. We have Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao in the south. These are Dutch islands. Bahamas historically was British, now is independent. And then, of course, you have in the Western Caribbean, you have Haiti, which is so-called French. I don't believe it's French. The language there to me is not French. It's more than French. And then you have the Dominican Republic. So that you have in the Western Caribbean in terms of language, Jamaica, and of course, coming to the Eastern Caribbean, you have countries like Antigua and Barbuda in Kitts, and Nevis. You have Montserrat, which is a British colony. They have which one again?
Can you see my
Dominica.
screen? Can you see my screen? Can you see the screen?
That one there. Yeah, that looks more like it. Yeah. Thanks. So within the context of the Caribbean, you have a number of organizations that needs to be understood. You have the Organization of American States that supposed to encompass all the countries of the region of the Americas. Although interestingly for years Cuba was excluded. And although I think they had made some concession in recent years, I'm not too sure if Cuba have rejoined because after the Cuban Revolution, the Americans tried to use, and they have been using the West to topple governments and also to keep certain oppressive governments in power. So you have that, the Organization of American States. So when you're thinking about the Caribbean, think about the Organization of American States. And there's a newer entity called the Association of Caribbean States, which is trying to encompass all the Caribbean, the states that are bound by the Caribbean Sea. Nicaragua, Colombia, Mexico, I think even Florida. I mean, the U.S. could be considered a Caribbean state too because of Florida. But basically that it is, and it is not as functional as it could be. You could look up on the Association of Caribbean States. Then you have the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, which have been the most functionally and operational entity in the Caribbean. It's a grouping of about 7 independent countries, including Grenada, Dominica, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Antigua, St. Kitts. And again, it's not coming to mind. And then, of course, you have Montserrat, who is a British colony. They have a sort of membership in CARICOM, which is very interesting. Plus, you have associate members like Anguilla and others. And I think the Virgin Islands might be associate members. And then you have observers. And then the bigger one from the mainly English-speaking Caribbean, CARICOM, which encompasses 15 Caribbean countries, including Montserrat, many of them independent. But this time we have Haiti in it, and you have Suriname, which is Dutch speaking. So that is kind of the organizational framework for the Caribbean, I would say. So whenever you think about the Caribbean, think about so. But I suppose I would focus more on the English-speaking Caribbean because that's what I'm most famous of. I'm most aware of for now. As CARICOM was formed in 19... Hello? Hello, CARICOM was formed in 1974 by 4 Caribbean prime ministers. The late Dr. Eric Williams of Trinidad and Tobago, late Fox Burnham of Guyana, late Era Barrow of Barbados, and then you had Michael Manley of Jamaica. And it was later joined by independent states like Grenada and Bahamas and so on. And it has been a kind of struggling animal because, like the OECS, the operation of these institutions seem to rely, and maybe the AU too, as with the AU, and outside financing for things to happen. And of course, the big powers have occasionally used those organizations, like the OECS island was used to invade Grenada in 1983, as was an attempt by ECOWAS. ECOWAS was being, there was an attempt to use ECOWAS to invade Niger recently. So they have been used. The OECS has a monetary union, Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, which we have more than 7 islands use the same currency, unlike Trinidad, who uses its own currency, Barbados, Jamaica. So that could tell you alone that for the bigger islands in the Caribbean, they're not really as close to unity as maybe we envisioned when we're thinking about unification of Africa, including the people of Africa, wherever they are. So you have that kind of situation. And then I would go back to the song. When the song was played, I would say to you folks, things have not changed that much since that time. It has only been modified a bit. People are slavish or slaving or being slaved as anything could be. There's that the branding is different. You have new plantations like the hotels, the mines, all of these exploit people and pay them little money. It causes mental issues for people, for instance, young. I mean, people have to leave the country areas to go to the town, the urban areas to find jobs. That means they have to leave the children early morning. And the kind of compensation they get is very minuscule. So we have that challenge. But I contend that it really have not gone away. The slavery still is there. And maybe new owners, from the same family or the same people, you know, Europeans and Americans and so on. So you have that. So the economy, part of the topic was the economy, the politics, economy, and the culture. In terms of the economy of the Caribbean, the Caribbean remains an extractive region where a lot of resources is extracted, whether in the form of agricultural produce or minerals. In the case of Guyana, now we have the issue of oil. Trinidad used to be oil. Jamaica and Guyana and Haiti at one time too, I think, but Suriname used to be sources of bauxite. The Caribbean, the islands in the Caribbean, in the Windward Island, mainly were producers of bananas. Of course, we know what happened to the banana. The American producers torpedoed the arrangement with the EU, where the islands had preferential treatment. You have so you have still a large, and of course, Grenada, producer of nutmeg and cocoa, used to produce some banana. Now, what Grenada produced quite a bit is fish for the export market, mainly the EU, United States and Canada. Not a little fast for the local people in terms of affordability. A preference is given for export. And you have this kind of situation where, in spite of over 150 years of end of slavery, we are still, a slave society. Minuscule salaries and so on. So the Caribbean. And then, of course, the colonials have come back through different means, whether it's USAID, overseas aid from Britain, and the various other colonial people here, Canada, forever keeping our people impoverished, and of course dictating how our governments behave. And as I say, I'm giving an oral presentation. It's not as methodically as we were taught, because my other colleague who is in hospital now was supposed to give the more kind of structured background, analysis, statistics, and so on. But we have just had a meeting of CARICOM, the 46th meeting in the Bahamas. I mean, in Guyana. Guyana is now the chairman of CARICOM until July, when Grenada would take up the mantle. Every 6 months, it rotates every 6 months. And in Guyana, they were talking about Haiti mainly, while the guy from Henry, or whatever his name in Haiti, was over in Nairobi. And by the way, it wasn't said in the continent. Benin have since agreed to supply some troops to the Caribbean countries. I mean, to Haiti. In Haiti, you have had some escalation in the violence. In fact, the news said that one of their leading gangster, said that they really want the current acting prime minister dead or alive. So we'll see what happens. In fact, the former president's wife of Haiti was arrested sometime last week or so. Not arrested, but charged. And it is believed that because those folks are trying to work on an election plan, if the woman is allowed to remain, she would abscond portray the plans of the imperialists, whether it's Canada, US, and Britain, and so on. So they find a way to indict her so that she doesn't stand a chance. That's how they try to do they did with Aristide. So we have that happening. They also have, so I want to stay on Haiti a bit. It's interesting that the president of Guyana said that they did 4 weeks work in 4 days when they had the conference. And it is not surprising to me, because they had to act on the basis of Uncle Sam and Ottawa. So they're doing the bidding of Uncle Sam. So they have not been able to come up on their own to assist the sister country of Haiti, because all these islands and them, they still do they still do injury to the Haitian people. If Haitian people turn up in these islands, including my island, my country, we deport them in this day and age. Notwithstanding the role Haiti played in our eventual freedom, if you should call it that. So I want people to notice and to bear in mind that the imperialist is about to go and start a new chapter in Haiti. They say that by July next year or June by next year, there should be election. The Haitian people are not being given a chance to contribute to what they want. And I think we should be mindful of that. And that is one of the things that is worrying in terms of when you check the role Haiti played in helping to emancipate the black man, the African man, and the rest of oppressed people. So, by the way, if people want to ask me questions, I function better when I'm asked questions. People want to ask me questions, you can ask and I will be willing to answer. But one of the things I want to point out is that the fragmentation of the Caribbean by language, and even sometimes even inter-island, the kind of division that is being left behind, keep division, that, I mean, it just, anytime the thing could explode between the various groupings in the islands and various islands. Especially when there is a sign of wealth or resources there that the colonial or the imperialist wants to plunder. And I could give you an example where, for instance, people was used, Caribbean people, from time to time. In the early days, the folks was shipped to Cuba to work on the plantation, then put Dominican Republic and Panama. So right now we are shipping our people to Canada to work on farms, US and so on. So there's no real plan in the Caribbean for any true liberation, I would say. We're still waiting, as Museveni said, although he's not the best example, that says that most African leaders are sitting waiting for some savior to come to rescue them. Same in the Caribbean. Those folks had Zelensky last year, and please, if I'm not making sense, let me stop me and let me get on track. Those folks last year was instructed to allow Zelensky to lecture to them on what they should do. And he said that he told them that in the Bahamas that they should follow rule-based laws. Rule-based, what that means, God knows. So they are following the dictates of their masters. Now, one of the issues that plaguing the Caribbean is crime and violence. And of course, it have a direct relation with the United States and Canada, where guns come from. And then the economic situation. Then the climate is playing a factor too. There's some researchers say that as the climate become more hostile, people's psychology is become imbalanced. So these are some of the things that we have to contend with. So I would pause here, and if people have any questions, please ask me, and then I will continue. Or we will. I will ask Brother Pigeon to play the other video so that maybe that could generate a little more conversation. As we said earlier, it's just an introduction this afternoon to the Caribbean. So we'll have a second part. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We will first of all go to other comrades here from the Caribbean who might want to share something with us as well, because there are so many comrades who have joined us today from the Caribbean. And feel free to raise up your hand so that you can come in first before we open up the whole conversation for the rest of us to contribute. I see Sister Mary X, your hand is back. Kindly, if there's anything you can share to us from the Caribbean in regards to the past history of the Caribbean, the relation between the Caribbean and Africa, the contribution of the Caribbean in the revolution process on Africa or in the Caribbean, the struggles and anything else that goes on in the Caribbean. This is, of course, the first informative session about the Caribbean. So, Sister Mary, and anybody from the Caribbean, just feel free to raise your hand. I'll come to you first.
Okay, sorry.
Sister Mary, can you just hold on a sec? So I just want to link what Brother Joseph has said to consensusism in the sense that Brother Joseph was right to point out that the analysis he's looking at, the fundamental question is to what extent or are our Caribbean brothers and sisters either linked to or looking forward to or being part of the total liberation, unification and development of Africa. Because the total liberation, unification and development of Africa is that which will strengthen the dignity of the African anywhere in the world, as it did when Ghana led the independence movement. So contributions for our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean is welcome. It would be nice if you follow Brother Joseph's lead and link it to Africa, us being the sixth region of the African continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mari.
Oh, thank you very much for letting me through. Grand Rising, everyone. I really wanted to ask Joseph a question, but I'm just going to slip in some things about, I don't know if you're aware, but CARICOM and the African Union formed, inaugurated a relationship, I think 2 Septembers ago. Yeah. I attended, the online meets there, etc. So there are things happening behind the scenes. And CARICOM was forced to take on board some of our concerns about what was happening in the Caribbean and the fact that America was trying to pit the Caribbean countries against Venezuela, etc., because we seriously believe that CARICOM is not only a representation of the governments, but essentially, you know, a representation of the people. And I think Lenroy Watson probably be from Global African Community Congress UK would probably be the best person to talk to about that. I put some links in the chat containing materials, videos, etc., of a man called, and he's a great man, he's a lovely man, called Morgan Dalphinus, and he's an African historian and linguist who have actually worked at the Mudugri University in North Nigeria, etc. And I find his books really, really interesting, because once you get into it, and you know, the issues are very complex. You just get lost, but you come out having understood, because he writes so well, being a linguist, and he also does ESOL, English as a second language thing. What I was going to ask Joseph about was an update on the situation in Grenada since the murder of our Uncle Morris Bishop, because I had friends who were members of the dual movement in England. I was at uni at the time, and I was thoroughly impressed as to what the Grenadian people were doing to raise their country up culturally, economically. You had the young teaching the old teaching the young. It was really tight. But what really, really disturbed me was the Caribbean countries were not communicating enough at the time to know what Grenada was about, to the extent where Reagan could tell them his stupidity and have them endorse what they wanted to do with and to Grenada. And whilst the ironic thing was that whilst Grenada was doing all this in St. Lucia, right, they were doing similar things, which were not as heavily publicized, because St. Lucians are sometimes it can be a bit insular, you know, and they just get on with it, etc. So and obviously, since then, you know, the West, they send in their agents and they break it up. St. Lucia had a wonderful system of linking the educational plans and curriculum to manpower requirements in St. Lucia. They were using Creole, which is our mother tongue, which is a combination of French, Portuguese, and various African languages based on the communities who were dragged to the Caribbean. And they were actually using our mother tongue to implement primary healthcare in the rural areas, because a lot of the older people at the time could not speak English. So they were doing wonderful things, and Grenada was doing wonderful things as well. But the islands weren't talking to each other. Yeah. So Joseph, what's going on in Grenada at the moment? Because I've just lost touch.
Could I answer, Pigeon, Brother Pigeon?
Yes, kindly go ahead.
Yes. First of all, in terms of what you said about St. Lucia, I agree. Because years ago I went to St. Lucia. I have some deep connection with St. Lucia, and I was impressed. I was invited to some activities where that was during the first leg of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and I was intrigued. Even before that, I'm an environmental activist, so I went to training in that part one time, and I saw they were using some of the methods that Grenada used, even in dealing with fisher folk. It was very amazing. Yeah, and also when they were doing planning primary healthcare and so on in places like Sufair or Library.
That's the south, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. It was in Afghan. It was very encouraging. So yes, you're right. But to answer your question about what happened in Grenada or with Grenada, we have gone 1,000 years backward. Believe it or not. Believe it. Let me say this.
So what are we going to do about it?
No, but that's all of that. What we're doing is part of it. All of that, bringing awareness. Let me tell you this. Anyone who believes that America or the colonialists or the imperialists could go in a country and leave it untouched, I mean, as compared to others, like they can go and damage some and don't damage others. Grenada is going through the same thing that Haiti went on, although albeit at a different level of peace. Don't forget, Haiti was the first Black country, I mean, to become a Black country and a liberated country in the West. Grenada was the first English-speaking island to revolt, to seek to shake off the colonial and imperialist vestiges of itself. And it's, if you look closely at that, keep saying to people here, the same pattern. The poverty level have escalated in Grenada as nothing before. Grenada is and still pride ourselves to some extent that we are more peaceful than the other islands. But every now and then you have that spike, you know, like in the last 2 weeks, we have had a terrible situation where some youngsters who escaped from police custody hijacked a yacht with 2 Americans. And that's a problem for the island right now, where bad publicity, where they kidnapped the people and hijacked the yacht and commanded to St. Vincent. And that's a big news worldwide now. So because we rely on tourism in what you common. So it is, and you will notice you hardly hear anything about Grenada. During the revolution, the news Grenada was on the news every day because, as Maurice Bishop famously said, the American was afraid that because we are predominantly Black folks here, we are not totally Black. I mean, there are other including of people here, as in other places. But 95% until recently, because we are changing the population we have a program called Citizen by Investment, which anybody who have a certain amount of money can buy a citizenship. Although on the other hand, we treat Africans and Haitians like whatever. I wouldn't even want to use the word. But so if you have money, you can buy citizenship. I took the government to court in '99 over that, and they came back with a new kind of version, which is even more intense in terms of giving more rights to those people and them. So we have one of the first things that the Americans did when they came here is to bomb our institutional knowledge. We had a radio station which was the home of such music that we heard, and others. They bombed that. Radio Grenada used to be the headquarters of the Windward Island Broadcasting Corporation. We banned that, and it encouraged the puppets here to dump books because they were printed, books about Grenada, simply because it were printed.
They do that all the time.
Yeah, so we are left scrambling and following the dictate of them. Now they're bringing back coming back with the USAID and all the other aid agencies, and they don't really help you. They just make you more impoverished. And of course, the leaders that they have ensured we have had, particularly the ones before this last government, there's a little hope in the new government that, although not so much, that things may change. But the previous government was a perfect government for the US, perfect puppet. So we are going back.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
We have more poverty. We have more poverty than ever. They are beggars. I grew up, when I went to school in Trinidad, I was shocked to see the level of begging on the street. I never thought that would happen. You come to Grenada, there's that level now. Thank you.
Okay, let me get to Sister Pamela. Thank you, Sister Marie. Sister Pamela.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I just want to say about, America. America treats the Caribbean as its backyard. It controls every aspect of the Caribbean and Latin America. A similar thing, that happened to Jamaica. It wasn't invaded, but when Michael Manley tried to become to work with Cuba, the Americans basically undermined the whole of the Jamaican system. And what they did was they completely took away any sort of financial aid. So Jamaica was literally bankrupt. There was no food in the country. There was no food in the shops. The rich went off to Miami and the poor people were left basically, you know, on the brink of starvation. They also introduced violence into Jamaica. Whereas it had been pretty sort of quiet before, the Americans introduced guns. They armed the opposing political groups. They armed the youths. So from then on, Jamaica just became lawless, and is continuously lawless because they're still shipping guns into the country, and it's just now totally corrupted. Not only have they interfered with Jamaica, they of course what they did was then, because Jamaica had no money at that time, they forced Jamaica to go to the IMF, and at one time I think it was the second most country indebted to the IMF. They've also gone right down through Latin America and interfered with every single country and either disrupted or killed their leaders and ruined their country. Jamaica is in the state of ruin, really. Politically, it's in the state. I mean, maybe Andrew Holness might tell you different. That's our prime minister, but the country has completely gone backward. Like Grenada, it's completely gone backward, and America keeps a tight grip on those countries. And whether they do it up front or whether they do it behind the scenes, they're doing it, and mostly behind the scenes. So yeah, you know, that's the problem at the moment with the Caribbean.
Thank you, Sister Pamela. There's somebody here with the name iPhone. So can you change your real name, or we'll put you in a waiting room? But yes, iPhone, turn on to your real name. Let me get anybody else who from the Caribbean, probably, who might want to contribute. Then we move to the people who might want to have their questions or answers. Brother Glenn, Elder Glenn, is there anything you want to say on the Caribbean? But Brother Kwame, come in first.
I think since Brother Gleroy is here, I think he should speak, because, as you know, he has his Sunday International where the 6th region contributes heavily, so he's in a better. I think in a better position to
I think that you're both moving on a false premise. You see, I'm not a Caribbean. I'm not someone who wants to be identified with what is in essence a prison. They stole our people, imprisoned them in the land that they stole from another nation of people. I mean, I'm always fascinated by the word Carib and Caribbean, which is supposed to be representing the people that were found there, that were killed off by the European. Christopher Columbus got lost on the way and thought he was in the west of India. That's why it was called the West Indian. And people have been trying to dress it up and twist it around all the time. I am not a Caribbean. I'm not a Jamaican. I have no association with his identity. This happened to be part of my journey, not my identity. I'm an African. I may not have been born in Africa, but I am an African, and Africa was born in me. I can talk about these things, but not on the basis that I'm a Caribbean or I'm from the Caribbean. Yeah, I really don't appreciate that, because that's not what I am. I will come back.
Brother, before you go on, I hope you are not implying that we are identifying you as such. Because
it was said that anybody from the Caribbean who wanted to speak before others, I consider myself one of the others. Okay, so I'll wait.
I have,
Thank you.
Brother, just so you know, I have, when the poster was being created, I did say that I had problem with the title The Caribbean, but I asked Brother Pigeon to liaise with Brother Joseph so that we get the correct heading, because I didn't think the Caribbean was appropriate. So thank you for raising that.
But Kwame, please, this is a personal position. I'm not seeking to impose that on anybody else. I will come to my contribution later. I'm not denigrating the decision to say that and use that, but I'll make my position clear or clearer later, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. Now, I'm still asking, let me now go back to the straight line. Anybody still on the Caribbean? Because if there's no any hand from those in the Caribbean, we'll go to Brother Kwame, who will then go to other members who are here. Of course, I see the King Mauli and his up, so that you can proceed the conversation. Then we'll open up to the whole floor so that we can contribute to this. We only needed to get information on what's going on in the Caribbean. That's what we really needed to know. So that's why I asked those who are either within that place now or currently to share what's going on in that area.
Okay,
Yeah,
so in light of what brother Glenroy is saying, I think Brother Joseph put the markers on the ground really when he said that there were various, if you like, combinations of the territory there, and he mentioned a few like CARICOM, the organization of East Caribbean states, something like that.
Caribbean state, yeah.
So I think that those are terminologies that we can use. Now, the question that Brother Glenn, I think, is raising, and I think he says to make his views clear later, is what is the ethnicity of the territories there? And the original ethnicity of the people were the Caribs, who were murdered, as we know, and then and then they were replaced by the Africans who were stolen from the continent. And I think Bob Marley's song, stolen from Africa. We know that song, which reminds us of that. But I am not an expert on that part of the world, and CSG is a philosophical and ideological grouping, and we are interested in the philosophy and the ideology that will enable us, including our sixth region, to have a perspective that can combat the continued imperialists and new colonization of the continent. So I'd like to share a page from Nkrumah's class struggle. I'll not say much about it, I just want to share it. But let me go to the cover page so that it's on the screen now. And this is written by Kwame Nkrumah when he was in exile in Guinea-Conakry. And he wrote this book, Class Struggle in Africa. And I don't know if you know, but before he wrote this book, people had come to the conclusion that Nkrumah wasn't a leftist, if you like, because he had disregarded the class struggle in Africa. So during exile, he wrote this book. The session I'm interested in for today is page 43 here, which I have put a marker around it so you know the paragraph I'm reading. I think this paragraph is important because sometimes people forget that the Pan-Africanists, George Padmore from the Caribbean, the Nkrumah and others, that they were aware of the long-term struggle that was ahead of us. Nobody ever amongst them ever said that political independence was the end of it. In fact, they made the argument that the purpose of political independence was so that we'll have economic independence. So political independence didn't end our oppression and exploitation. So let me read this paragraph to remind those of us here. It reads, but political independence did not bring to an end economic oppression and exploitation, nor did it end foreign political interference. The neo-colonialist period begins when international monopoly finance capital, working through the indigenous bourgeoisie, attempts to secure an even tighter stranglehold over the economic life of the continent than was exercised during the colonial period. It's fashionable, so quote and end. It's fashionable today for people to talk about, oh, all we got was flank independence. Oh, all we got was this, and our national anthem, and that was, and they speak like that in derogatory terms, as if when our Pan-African mothers and sisters were fighting for independence, all they were fighting for was some kind of flag independence. That wasn't the case at all. it was that ultimately Africa will be united, will be liberated, and that Africa will develop, so that Africans, and including the CIS region, if I may add, will live like, we live dignified lives. In fact, Nkrumah did say to Modibo Keita at one point that until and unless Africa is united and strong, Africans will not respect themselves, and others will not respect Africans. The global disrespect of Africans, wherever they are, is all linked to the state of the African continent. So that's where our mind must be. That is what our goal must be: the total liberation, unification, and development of Africa. Because when Africa is united and strong, Africans will respect themselves, and others will respect Africans. Today, the Chinese is respected. When China speaks today, people listen. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, nobody really took China seriously, because China was as poor as us. Nobody respected them, and so on and so forth. But today, China can talk, can rebut anything America says. And America says, well, China is our strategic competitor. That's misleading the world. The real strategic competitor of America is not China, it is Africa. When the black man, who is now probably asleep, from what we can see, when he wakes up, and then like the elephant, as the creator of apartheid said the African is like the elephant, and our job is to make sure that he doesn't see himself as an elephant, because the day he sees himself as an elephant, he will just walk over all of us. And that is a fear. The real target in the Ukraine-Russian war is not Russia. It's for China. But the real target for China is the African, the black man and woman. That is what this is all about. It is about our oppression, suppression, so that they can continue to steal our resources, and so that they can continue to live the kind of life they live. And the majority of our people live in poverty. So let's not forget that that we Africans are the strategic competitor of all current civilizations. Let's be clear on that. So what we are doing today is looking at the role of what I would call the African Caribbean, because they are Africans. And that's why I suggested we change that title. I had suggested that the African Caribbean, and their role, that we work with them to see that it is important that they are roped into our total liberation, unification, development. Of course they were. It is not new. George Padmore, who was from Trinidad, he lived in Ghana, as you know, and became the head of Nkrumah's African Bureau, which was responsible for the revolution across the continent. Of course, he was poisoned. We know that. But that was the reason he was, because of his role. And when George Padmore was poisoned and died, that really unhinged Nkrumah, because George Padmore was very central to the whole Pan-African agenda, which is to say that some of us think that our African Caribbean brothers and sisters are really central to our total liberation, unification, development. We need them in order to move the continent forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, Pigeon, before you proceed, let me say two short things. One is that the drainage or the destruction of our society, Caribbean society, continue by the pillaging or the where the poaching of our teachers, our lawyers, not lawyers, our teachers, our doctors, the best minds were being taken away. Our nurses, we are in crisis. The Caribbean is in crisis. And thanks to Cuba, who sometimes help come to our rescue because of their approach to health, that there's a semblance of some kind of semblance of stability in the health sector, but it's in danger. The other thing about it, in terms of the lack of independence of the Caribbean, particularly the leader, and also Sister Maria asked about the situation with the African-Caribbean partnership or so. You know, this happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and very few people in Grenada knew about it, and the Caribbean, to say the least, notwithstanding it was online. And there's somebody from the UK that had sent me the link at the time this was coming. The then Prime Minister, who was a perfect puppet of the US. Although he participated, there's still nothing to serve the interests of the people of Grenada. Now, as for him, when a delegation was about to go to, when Gaddafi was still alive and Gaddafi was trying to support the development of the Caribbean islands, a reporter asked him whether Washington was not going to be angry with them going, the Caribbean group of leaders going to Libya. And he said, as for me, I've already got permission get clearance from the State Department or from the US. He said it. I repeated that many times, and he takes people to court. You have not been able to take me to court on that one. They have to get permission. This is why they have not been able to do anything in relation to Haiti, or even the case, a little movement was made on Venezuela and Guyana to the auspices of Lula in Brazil and Comrade in St. Vincent. But anyway, I just thought I'll add that to the mix.
Okay, let me get to the King Maoli. Then I say, let's go to the King Maoli, and then Pichau, and then Sister Mary. Then Brother Glory will come in.
Yeah, Brother Pigeon.
Yes.
Can we hear the African anthem at this point, please?
Okay, can you proceed?
Thank you. It should be on my screen now, yeah? Thank you.
Tuungane sote na tushereke pamoja ushindi kwa ukombozi wetu. Tujitoe wenyewe, tusimame pamoja kulinda uhuru na umoja wetu. Enyi bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote na tujibidishe kutoa kilicho bora kwa Afrika. Chimbuko la wanadamu, chemchemi ya utamaduni, tumaini letu wakati wa mafarakano. Enyi bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima.
Thank you.
Thank you. The music was actually, the anthem was recorded in Kiswahili. So majority of you might have not got what was going on, but we believe in near future, all of you will be able to know Swahili and learn Swahili and be able to follow this. So, Brother the King?
Yes, greetings, brothers and sisters. It's so sad sometimes when you hear the nature of all that is taking place all over the world when it comes to blacks, and you still know that there have been elders who have really fought heavily, yet their fight was taken for granted, and it's still being taken for granted by the current generation. And I don't know whether it is generational gap or yeah, but it hurts when you still hear that. When I pay attention to the Caribbean situation and the African situation, I do not see much difference in these two people because I would say the Caribbean went through what we call slavery and the African went through colonialism. And so the struggle is a bit different, and the language for the two of us is also a bit different when we are trying to communicate to each other. You realize that when you are trying to also to stretch out to the Caribbean brother and Caribbean sister to be able to live together, there is still this gap. Your ancestors sold us, and a whole lot of story that comes in, which is also preventing the African uniting. So if truthfully the Caribbean itself that is scattered all over, in small, small, tiny, tiny islands, cannot even have, unity on her own, then how much more can it with the motherland itself? That is also another challenge. So now the question will be asked, how did our predecessors do it? And how can we also learn from that and say, okay, let's put this into our curriculum, because they've hijacked our educational system for sure, which is the cause of this majority of all these problems. But then if the materials are there, how do we compile the materials and make them one holistic material that after a child or a young person goes through that course, he or she really knows what is going on and can take a decision that will lead to the African identity that we are all looking out for? Is there something like that that we can always seek for?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I hope brother Anthony Joseph will be coming in to answer to that, what he thinks or whether he has something in that line. But let me get to Brother Pichau first. Brother Pichau?
Yes, greeting family. Yeah, my name is Pichu, not Pichau. Pichu, by the way. Pichu. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction.
No problem. Yes, so obviously I was born in the Congo. I'm a Congo Bongo man. I grew up in the West, France, the UK. But I am, Aboriginal, first and foremost, Aboriginal, indigenous, original, human beings of not just the Congo, not just Africa, but all over the world. That's who my ancestors are, and that's who I am, you see? And so I see myself on a global scale. Africa, sometimes we say we are Africans, we are Pan-Africans, but anyway, let's just focus on the Caribbeans for now. What I can say about the Caribbeans, it is interesting, because I kind of, in France, I knew the French, speaking Caribbeans. Here, in the UK, you have the British, you have the Portuguese, the Spanish, you have all the Caribbeans, from all over the world. But also, like I say, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm very interested in my, history, my sisters, the history of the whole world, anthropology and so forth. So I'm very keen on research and so forth. So the Caribbean, like one of the sisters, wrote, in the message, not all the so-called Black, so-called Africans or Caribbeans see themselves as Africans. You know, although they are Black, although they have the DNA of Africans, but they do not see themselves as Africans, as, you know, our brother, you know, Glenn Roy see himself as Africans, meaning Aboriginal, you know, of the motherland. You see, not all of them, and in fact, many of them don't see themselves like that. Not just in the Caribbean, but even in America, even in, you know, in the Americas as a whole, North, South, Central. You see, and that's one issue, big issue. But you know what is going on in the Caribbean, just like the brother Joseph explained as well, is that, you know, not all the Caribbean are united. That's one. You know, they have a lot of issues in terms of language barrier, you know, even culture, you could say, and also history, you know. And you have very, very tiny places in the Caribbean that you never hear of, you know, as if like nothing is happening there. You know, you only hear about Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, maybe, you know, some well-known names, you know. But the Caribbean is quite a big place. You know, there are many, many islands, small, especially islands, we never hear about, but there are things going on there too. And they are also our brothers and sisters, you know. And so all those names that we give, you know, let's say the West, you know, give us, you know, Caribbeans, you know, Tainos, Arayaks, you know, and then you're talking about the, you know, many of the names, you know, are Cherokees or whatever, but let's focus on the West Indies. Like the brother say, you know, only because the ship of Christopher Columbus got lost and they thought they were in India as the East India, but they found out that they were, you know, somewhere else, that they called it the West Indies, but that's another story again. But what we're trying to say here is that obviously, of course, the continent of Africa was, you know, was also, you know, there was slavery too, you know, as a matter of fact, slavery started, you know, in some of the places there, you know, although, you know, well, anyway, let's me focus on the Caribbean. The Caribbean has that issue, in fact, of, you know, let's say Jamaica. If I give the example of Jamaica, their motto is out of many, one people. Meaning you have black, white, yellow, green, you know, all those different races, but they see themselves as one, you know. And again, like the sister said, not all the black so-called supposed to be African see themselves as Africans. They would rather say, I am Caribbean or I am black Caribbean, but they will not use the word Africans or identify themselves as African, you know. And so politically speaking, you know, the West, you know, neo-colonialism, the West has, they know how to divide and conquer, divide and rule, and also confuse people psychologically. So they can definitely lose themselves, you know, and find a place of belonging, you know, because obviously you have to understand in some places, like they've been there for so long, you know, and they, you know, a lot of them also they kind of, you know, say, oh, it's because of the African, they sold us, oh, they did this, they did that. So they have even hatred amongst their own towards their own ancestors because of lack of knowledge, lack of identity, lack of, you know, many things, and also brainwash, you know, reading books written by the West, you know,
Okay.
that so there's a lot of issues there that the Caribbean as a whole, you know, that, you know, people think they're unified, you know, even CARICOM has a lot of issues, so many issues. So when we talk about, I will just give 1 minute, please, sorry. When you talk about the 6th region, we have to really, you know, understand that the 6th region is the diaspora as a whole, right? It's not just the Caribbean, but it's the whole diaspora. But what we're saying is there is so much issues, there is so much to actually sort out, you know. But I am always optimistic in the sense that, you know, we are in the age of awareness, age of, you know, information, age of awakening, you know. And so as long as we are humble, as long as we seek truth and justice, you know, and reparatory justice, you know, and have this, you know, willing to unite, you know, and liberate ourselves, you know, and be self-sustaining and sustainable, self-sustained, then we will be fine, but it's all about knowledge. It's all about applied knowledge, wisdom, and being, and seeking real truth and real justice. And it's all about the Aboriginal people of all over the world, because words that we use, Africa, Caribbeans, this and that, we are the Aboriginal people, not just in Africa, but all over the world, and we also bear in mind our brothers and sisters in the East. If you study the story of Zanzibar, for example, you see how many brothers and sisters, got lost in the East over there, all the way to Australia and all over the world. But we are the Aboriginal people of all over the world. So if we were talking about Pan-Africanism, we have to talk about Pan-Africanism from the motherland all over the world. We have to reclaim our land, gifted responsibility to protect, and safeguard planet Earth as a whole. I will end there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Of course, it's just that you have limited time. We have around 18 minutes per minute. But let me go to, we have 3 hands up. We have Sister Mary, Brother Coco, and Brother Mike. Brother Kwame, is there something you want to say?
No, thank you.
Okay, so let's go to Sister Mary. Be brief a bit. We have less minutes remaining, please. Sister Mary? Or Mary? Or Brother Coco? Any of you?
Is that my turn? Are they not coming on board?
Sister Mary is having some little technicality.
Hello, I'm mute. Am I back? Am I through? I was muted.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, proceed before Brother Kwame. Brother Coco.
Okay, very briefly, the previous noble made some very valid points. Okay, right? Now, I've put a lot of chat in the box so you can read what I really have to say. But what I want to say is that we mutually have to make an effort in terms of our uniting. Okay, when I meet a lot of people from the continent, all right, the first thing they ask me is if I'm a Jamaican, and I say no, I'm not Jamaican because we have 200 islands in the Caribbean. Okay, and they only know Jamaica because of the reggae music, etc. They might have heard of St. Lucia because of the holidays and things like that. Our continental siblings must meet the effort to meet us halfway, because we're the ones who have been reaching out with the African history, with the wanting to go back to Africa, etc. Yes, problems will exist, but it's all in the mind, because when you get with your siblings, right, from the other side of the ocean, you realize that there's absolutely no difference. You eat the same food. We eat the same food in the Caribbean. We have the same spiritual practices. We have the same cultural practices, etc. So we need to create a space where we can have the difficult conversation that we're having here, as well as get to know each other on our terms and nobody else's. I yield.
Thank you. Brother Coco?
Yeah, sorry. Before Brother Coco speaks, can I say thank you, Sister Marie, for her point. I want her also to know that this class, this session, is about reaching out as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Coco. Then Cameron is also on the waiting list. So, Brother Coco.
Thank you all. I would like to quickly remind us what Pan-Africanism is about. This is from the African Union Echo from 2013. It says Pan-Africanism is an ideology and movement that encourage the solidarity of Africans worldwide. It is based on the belief that unity is vital to economic, social, and political progress, and aims to unify and uplift people of African descent. The ideology asserts that the fates of all African peoples and countries are intertwined. At its core, Pan-Africanism is a belief that African peoples, both on the continent and in the diaspora, share not merely a common history, but a common destiny. So having said that, what are we up against? We are up against elitism. home and abroad. We are up against those people who have been taught that universalism is the way to go. Is there in the continent, is there in the Caribbean, is there in here, is everywhere. It's where people think capitalism is the way to go, the system which has been born of imperialism, of slavery, of feudalism in America, in Europe, of serfdom. That is the system which we have been taught that is the best to solve all of our problems. And the fear which has been instilled in us, it continues to control us and it continues to separate us. And then there is the demoralization. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah refers to this. Lots of times we are demoralized. We need to find that in us as peoples, the moral value of who we are, and then find our way back. Religion is being used to divide us. And right now we are being used like farms. And in the Caribbean, they are used like a holiday resort where they just are there and everyone else from anywhere goes in, have fun, and leave them there. I read or saw a story about one of these tax havens, which is in the Caribbean. The people there are suffering big time. But most of these people are making lots and lots of money. So we need to talk about the place that history of slavery has been taught, and to divide us, and then come back together, work together towards the common goal as Africans. I yield.
Thank you, Brother Michael.
Yeah, greetings, brothers and sisters. Yes, there's been some great points, and when the brother was talking from the Congo, he made some fantastic points. But most of the people in the Caribbean, in the West, we've been, disunity is how our enemy has, flourished. He's always kept us divided against one another. And yes, there is people in the Caribbean who may not see themselves as Africans, or who are not connected to Africa, who believe that the Africans sold us into slavery, which is really another lie. In Sir Hilary Beckles' book states, that there were people who did take part, but our people fought for us. They sunk at least 5 slave ships from canoes, right? They tried their hardest, and we've always fought. And we've, my name's Michael 5X, I'm from the Nation of Islam, and in our teachings, one of our lessons is, who's the original man? And the answer is, the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the creator of the planet Earth, God of the universe. So eventually we have to reconcile that our people, we're everywhere. We built this planet. The original people of England were black, right? When the Roman scribe came, Tacitus, he described the ancient people as nimble-footed Nubians, right? The word Dublin means black land, right? So we've been all over this planet. We've conquered this whole planet. And, it's something we might have to get our heads around, that China may not just be trying to just steal our resources. There's a belief that they realize that they can't rise and defeat this Satan without the help of the black man. And the black man has to rise in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Brazil, in America. Wherever we are, we have to rise, right? This enemy cannot be defeated. He's too clever. It's only a united front of all the indigenous people. That's why when I love the brother talk about the indigenous people, the Caucasian's the only race that never calls himself indigenous, because he knows he's not. Because if he was, he wouldn't behave the way he behaves, right? So our enemies work night and day. Satan doesn't take a day off. He's looking at any which way he can to undermine us, to kill us, to take us out. to turn brother against brother, sister against sister, brother against sister, sister against brother, male against old against young, young against old. We have to work as hard as he works to keep us divided. We have to work even harder to keep us unified, and to understand that China can't do this on their own. After, the only reason they want Russia is Russia's the only country who wasn't involved in the slave trade and refused to take part in the carving up of Africa. And if they can take Africa, Russia, China is the next superpower, right? Once they've taken out, there's no one else, right? So China's doing its best to, I believe, and that if Africa becomes powerful, right, they won't be bullied ever again by the West, right? They won't be. You look at what's happening with Abraham Traore, Mali, Niger. They're all unified. They've told the French, you touch one, you have to touch us all. They've never ever seen that in Africa, right? And I believe that's the start. We have to unite with our brothers from those countries in Africa, because they are the young warriors. And I yield.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Elder Glenn, kindly come in.
Yes, greetings, and thank you, Michael. I do suggest caution when we talk about Russia's imperialist past, because we're not talking about communist Russia when we talk about enslavement of African people. People give the whole of the Tsars Russia, and knowing what they were involved in and the role they play in European royalty, it's not an easy give. We need to look carefully at that. We're not talking about a communist Russia. I want to put two things on the table that I want to come back to. People can mull it over. Why are Africans descending? And which Africans are descending? Is that the ones that are born on the continent, or the one born off the continent? Why are they descending? Huh? Why aren't we ascending? The other thing I'd like people to think about is that it's not when the idea of the sixth region wasn't even so much agreed on, but by consensus, i.e. nobody said anything against there being a sixth region. That wasn't when the idea of Africans outside of the continent being part of a formal structure. So I just want to leave that there for the time being. Earlier on, I made it very clear that through my parents, I've never, ever been led to believe that I was a Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica. I once had a Jamaican passport, lived in England, as people know, for many years. But my parents have never taught me that I was a Jamaican. And it always impressed me. My mother retired in Barbados for other reasons, but the fact is she's not limited to any of these islands. And I don't get it. I honestly don't. Where people are clinging on to a false narrative of a flag and anthem that was given to enslaved people who were not being freed economically or politically. It was a facade. And those Jamaicans that are here, if there are any, the similarity of the Scottish flag to the Jamaican flag must give you some worry and concern, because it was designed by a Scotsman. It's the same shape, the same layout, just the colors are different. Now, if we are talking seriously about unification of African people, and it's a throwaway phrase for many people, they say it as an offhand idea. the agreement between CARICOM and the African Union was unnecessary, because the 6 regions existed but not implemented. And the African Union threw it out like a piece of meat on the floor without any offer of structure of how it would be done. Think of the 6th region is all of the rest of the world where Africans live. There was no suggestion that there should be a Caribbean region of the 6th region, a sub-region of the 6th region in Europe, etc., etc. Excuse me a moment, my alarm's going off. That's just a reminder of my age that I make sure I should eat something at 9 o'clock, which is not really 9 o'clock in Zanzibar, but we leave that. So there are no structures in place by the African Union. It's as if they don't want it to succeed. And we have to analyze that. We have to examine that. Why is it that you have not offered assistance to those people in the 6th region? The Caribbean is a prominent part of that feature. We can talk about the role that many Africans play in South America. Brazil is the most populated country outside of the continent with African people. So there are many, many examples. I think Belize, I'm not sure the proportion, but I think it's quite high. So there are countries. Guyana, for example, whilst there is a dynamic about between Asian and African, is still a fairly highly populated African country. So why hasn't any African country, including Barbados, which is one of the leading lights around relationship with Africa, has never applied, to my knowledge, for membership of the African Union? The only country I understand is Haiti has applied. And there's question about whether it was successful or not, or whether it was turned down. I think my last information on it was agreed that they would have observer status. But when you think that Israel is trying to seek the same level of involvement, you make you wonder, is that what Africans should be applying for? Should they not be asking for full recognition? In every, and I won't be much longer, Chair, in every region on the continent, there are structures and substructures. This is what Niger and others are getting away from, ECOWAS, because it covers that area of the continent. So the 6th region should have structures, and it's not that difficult. There could be a North American section of the 6th region, a Caribbean section, a European section, and so on and so forth. So point I'm trying to make is both sides appear not to be seriously pushing forward. Because I think there is a need for ACE, for Africans to unite right across the globe. The treatment of Africans right across the globe is as a result of the perception that they can give to the continent of Africa. And that is an obstruction for Africans outside to take serious relationship and connection with the continent. Let's not kid each other. There are people who will tell you they would never live in Africa. They love Africa. They're an African, but they will never live here. They would never come here because of this or that, because of what they've been told and what they've read in the media, etc., etc. And this hasn't just started. When formal enslavement, and I always be careful about saying enslavement ended, when formal legislative enslavement ended, one of the things that they went to great lengths to tell us is the very thing we heard repeated here, that Africans sold us. Some were involved in it. Don't they tell us about the hundreds and thousands of Africans who fought the enslavers, who killed them, who destroyed their boats and their castles, etc., etc. And if they're not going to tell us, when are we going to tell ourselves, in answer to this suggestion, which I say is true, Africans were involved in assisting European in enslaving our people, but they're also involved in fighting against it. My last point, Chair, because I think you want me to yield some time, is if we continue to see ourselves as descendants of Africa, then we need to define who is this descendants, because it was designed to create division. Africans outside of Africa were considered African descendants, and then Africans on the continent were something different. And I am not descending. I am an African, and I've been an African all my life. Not a Caribbean, not a West Indian, not a Jamaican, not a Barbadian. And not everyone in Africa see themselves as an African, by the way. If we're worried about people in the Caribbean who don't see themselves as African, lots of people in the Caribbean see themselves as Zimbabwean, Tanzania, Kenyan, etc., etc. They don't all see themselves as Africans. This is what Pan-African is about, and what we're supposed to be teaching and developing, the unity of Africans. So I hope we will change the narrative. I am not a descendant of an African. I am not the descendants of a slave. My people were enslaved. It was not a choice. We need to be careful with our language and how we say these things. Thank you, Chair. I hope I'll be able to come back.
Thank you, Brother Christian Kwame. Can you come in and help us finish this?
I think the time is 9:03. Brother Glory, thank you very much. I think you should come back when we have part 2 to lay out your ideas, because Brother Mauli, who is joining us from Ghana, he's not alone in that use of language that we sold Africans. A lot of Africans are not aware that that is not a true narrative. That is not true that we sold. I mean, Jaja Fopobu, who is from what is called Nigeria today. I mean, we know the history. He fought and fought and fought to make sure that enslavement doesn't take place. And Jaja Fopobu is not the only one. Anyway, the time is 9:03, and we've gone 3 minutes past our time. We are very jealous in keeping time. So, Brother Pigeon, I'll hold you responsible again for letting us go beyond 9, but in a very brotherly way, if you see what I mean. So yeah, so thank you. Yeah, Brother Pigeon, bring the meeting now to a close, and remind us of a Thursday meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all, comrades. Time might not be sufficient enough to talk about our history. It's been many years, and it's many pages and many files. But
sorry, Brother Pigeon. Sorry, I think Brother Joseph should be given a minute or two to make his final comments before you formally close the meeting.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. Kindly, Brother Joseph, in 2 minutes. Brother Joseph?
Hold on. I'm getting the hold on, just give me a second. Hold on, I'm getting mixed up. Hold on, just give me, I'm trying to get the link. Hold on.
And whilst he's getting ready, Brother Pigeon, get his second song ready. It's 9:05, and we need to wrap things up. Get his second song ready so you can play his second song after, and then close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. That's noted.
The one by Black Wizard. I come back again.
What, Brother Joseph? What are you trying to say?
The one by Wizard. I come back again. Come back again. The the last one I sent.
Yes, I have it ready.
Yeah, probably you could. Let me see, because I'm finding difficulty in coming back on. I don't know why.
It's fine, Brother Joseph. Just make your final comments because of the time, and then we'll close the meeting with one of the songs you said.
Okay, yes. One of the speaker that had said that that we were enslaved in the Caribbean, but whereas the folks in Africa were colonized. And I want to tell, we had both experience of being enslaved and also colonized later on. So so we have double dose. So yes, but thank you everybody for joining the conversation. And it seems as though we have a lot to discuss again. And the only thing I would say is that even though a lot of our people on both sides of the divide don't see ourselves as Africans, it's because of the education. And it would take a little while for us to change that, to transform our people into seeing that everybody else is somebody else, but we are nobody. We call ourselves based on nationality rather than who we are. So thank you, everybody, and hopefully we'll have the next conversation and it will be even more exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Your song will be ready. As you wind up, we request members to, at their own pleasure, to listen to this song, which is also part of the history. But as I wind up, I'll say that a lot has happened in our history, and we cannot finish it in 1 hour or 2 hours. So we therefore envision to have the part 2 of this Caribbean story, or we will have to see how we will frame it again. But actually, that's the essence of our information, and we'll do it maybe as soon as possible. So this coming Saturday, we'll be having a part 2 of the Putin interview with an aspect of the economic angle. We want to check the economics of that and what it implies and mean for the Africa unification and African development. Next Thursday, this coming Thursday, of course, from 7 p.m. GMT, we will be going on with our reading and our class, which I encourage members here to join us. It's a philosophy class that then give root to all this conversation we have, give us the dimension and everything else in terms of philosophy and guidance. This consciousness study class, which is the main class on Thursday where we do the reading and sharing our thinking in regards to that text. So I welcome you all and I encourage you, kindly come in and share our thinking so that we build our consciousness. Majority of you here do join us. Feel free to get in touch with me in case you don't have the link, but I'll always share the link for the Thursday. So without wasting my time, I'll say thank you all. Thank you, elders, for all the contribution you've made. We are having part 2 as soon as possible. Thank you all.
Thank you. Great meeting. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank.
Greetings, fam. Take care, family. Stay blessed.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for